Welcome back to Rio Paulo, guys. It's DH here. At this point, the city's getting pretty big. We're going to continue that trend in this episode, and that's going to include getting our tram line finally running. And how cool does this look? We're also going to make an end-of-line stop for that tram on a brand new beachfront area that we're going to build up in this episode, and it's pretty rugged too. So let's not muck about, let's get into it. The first beachfront we're going to build is this little wee one here on Google Earth. This little wee beach is wedged in between two massive cliffs, and it's got a really cool looking sort of symmetrical park area, and yeah, I thought this would be pretty cool to include. So just very quickly before we go and do that, there's a couple of areas from the last episode that I lost due to a save sort of malfunctioning on me, so you're going to see me very quickly reinstall those areas. I'm also going to quickly extend some of the larger hotel looking buildings around the peninsula. I love how this looks at the end because it's sort of obeying the terrain really closely, and we can see some of those low residential terracotta roofed houses poking through in the background as well. So right, now we can go back over to the beach. For me, it feels better to move on when I know areas are sort of 100% complete. So I'd set this beach out initially and had like some of Sully's stuff down here to make it look really nice, but I'm pretty much going to start again here and make it a little bit wider, trim the cliffs a little bit so they fit more closely with that image from Google Earth, and basically just prepare the area to get the roads down. The roads down here are going to frame the shape of the park, which is a V basically. Where they apex together, there's a little wee roundabout, and then it snakes its way through the valley and back into the main part of the city. I'm not going to get too carried away with the roading connection back into our main network at this point. Eventually we'll make our way out here building up the city and we'll tidy all of this up. But we'll go back to that V area around the park and just make the road a little bit narrower. So in terms of the buildings down here, we still have to get pretty creative. We've only got those vanilla assets at this point, but there's still quite a few that can sort of suit the theme. And I found this mansion thingy here. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a terracotta roof. It's sort of like a slaty grey colour, but that's okay. The architecture here is pretty perfect. My thinking with this building is there would have to be some reason to build down here on this beach. So I want to make at least a part of the area down here look really old. For instance, this could well have been some sort of military installment. Maybe there's a set of old houses around here too that housed the soldiers that worked here, or, you know, I'm really just trying to give the area some sort of purpose. So with that thinking in mind, I'm also going to have a lot of those little wee terracotta roofed houses down here. They're going to be put in sort of in an organic manner. I don't want them following too much of a rigid grid pattern, and I also want a couple of lots down here to represent some upgraded buildings. Like this would still be a really sought after area to come and have a look at, come and hang out at, so I want to represent a few hotels in the area as well. So most of those buildings were pretty straightforward to put down, as you could imagine, but the terracotta ones, they take the work. I'm also going to have them creeping up the cliffside here just a little wee bit, just at a manageable difference. Remembering that we still have to run a road up here in game to have this function, and I do want the city to function ultimately. When I was running that road up here, I experimented with having a retaining wall on the outside of it to hold the cliff back, but I didn't really like the way it looked, so I changed this up a little wee bit in the end. I wanted to put down something cool and beach vibey right here at the front of the beach, and I've decided to put a dog park in. I think this looks pretty good on the beachfront. It's got a nice sandy base to it as well, and directly adjacent to that we're going to have a little car park in here. There's not many public transport options, at least for now, that come down to this area, so a little wee car park jammed in here sort of makes a bit of sense. You don't really see too much of this at the end anyway. In fact, you don't really see too much of any of the beachfront because it's all covered with big shady trees in real life, and that's what I'm going to do here as well. Unfortunately, we don't have any big shady trees that are perfect for Brazil. Like, I don't know what type of tree it is, but when you look at all the photos, they have a really wide canopy, but the leaves aren't too close to the ground. Like, they're not going to impede traffic or people walking underneath them, and the ones in game, there isn't really that achieve that. The trees with a high trunk in game have a really narrow canopy, and the ones with a wide canopy have leaves all the way to the ground that would just, the traffic would have to drive directly through the tree basically. So if you do see any vehicles clipping through trees, hopefully you can forgive me. So anyway, this car park, it's going to have really good access directly onto the beach as well. We're going to have some concrete barriers here to stop any lunatics driving directly onto the beach. And I've left a little wee gap in it for foot traffic to come to and from the beach. And I want to make this pretty detailed through here. I want sort of sand looking like it's been dragged through here with foot traffic. Lots of grungy, damaged areas in the car park. And then eventually all those trees we spoke about. So after that, there's pretty much one predominant space left on the beachfront, and here I'm going to turn some buildings in game into like an old looking mill or factory. This building here I found in game's got this nice coin detail down the external corners, and it's got these nice French style windows and doors, which gives it a bit of an old buzz. This has probably been repurposed into something, but we're not going to go into specifics. I just want to put it here on this beachfront, make it look like there's been a little bit of traffic to and from, and then just try and make it look really old. So lots of grime and marks on the bricks and maybe a little bit of graffiti here and there, things like that. So check this out, the dolphins are coming for a look. This is really cool. We are almost done with this area. It's time to put the park in, and with that you'll see me add a few other bits and pieces here and there. The park itself was pretty simple. I just put down some pedestrian paths where I wanted the concrete areas to get all the angles correct, and then pretty much just used the surface painter in between. I top it off with a few gardens and some hedges here and there. There's also like a fountain thing I add in the middle of the little plaza, and I just love the way this looks here in between these big cliffs when it's finished. Alright, so next we're going to creep around the corner here a little bit and just try and create what we see in real life. You can probably tell that my map here isn't one-to-one at all. I'm just taking inspiration from that real life model and just making it smaller and a little bit more compact really. Look, my computer's a potato, alright, I just can't build a city that's going to be too big, so the map has to reflect that. And after our look at Google Earth, you can see that we've got that narrow strip of development that goes up the very edge of the peninsula, and we've also got like some marinas and little man-made bays and inlets. There's a couple of unique bridges in this area as well, and lots of old terracotta buildings. So once I've got this terrain loosely where I want it to go, we are going to modify this a little bit. I want to get the roads in, and the idea is I want to have a very small grid pattern running directly off the same angle as the little bay that we've made, and then we're going to have a lot of smaller roads snake their way with the terrain off of this little grid. The buildings are going to be a nice mix of big high-rise hotels and little wee terracotta roofed homes. And just note, don't worry about the trees going red, it doesn't last long. I speed the game up a little bit off camera. The first thing I want to do is get the terrain ready here for a little wee special custom bridge that I'd like to make. This is based on the one we see in real life. It's sort of an inverted version of it, if you will. I think this would add a little bit of point of difference to this part of our city, and I just think it'd look cool. So to make this in-game, I'm just using a couple of different versions of the little wee narrow alleyway road. If we use the elevated version, it gets this little wee hooded part over it, a little wee sort of shelter, and then I can use just a normal elevated version of it for the rest of the bridge. It might actually be the gravel road that has the little hood over it. In any case, it's there if you look hard enough, and then you can see I've also raised that middle section up so that boats can leave the area. They're going to need enough headroom to come to and from. After I've got all those heights sorted, then it's time to put in all of these rocks around this raised section in the middle and drive myself insane. I could have used the boulder here, but the scale of it is just massive. It throws the whole area out, so I have to use these little wee ones. So after quickly contemplating my life choices, next I want to put in a building here that represents another really old part. There's this really perfect looking old royal villa in game, and I've had this up my sleeve for a while, but I've kind of wanted to wait for the right area to use it. I was close to using this in the first beach we made, but I've saved it for here. Next, I'm going to follow the real life model, and there's a piece of reclaimed land here that juts out on a bit of a funny angle. It's got a car park and a couple of important looking buildings on it in real life. I'm picking it's got something to do with a marina in the area maybe. But I really love the way it juts out on its own angle. Like, it's not following any rules, it's just going, I want to be here and here I am. And that's part of the reason why I wanted to include this and maybe not some other areas from around here. I've finished the area off with a few other little props like trees and cars. You can also see we've got a really nice mix of buildings. They look really nice down here underneath some of this big high terrain. I've got those trees everywhere, little car parks where I think we need them. We've got some factory looking buildings down here by the marina as well. The marina itself here was made the same way as the one we made in the first episode basically, just with a few concrete props. But I think that looks pretty cool. The other side of our little inlet here, we've got lots of those terracotta buildings. These offer a really sweet contrast. Overall, I'm really pleased with this area because it doesn't look exactly like any other area we've built so far. It's got its own little vibe and buzz going on for sure. I also think it's following what we see in real life, close enough that it would be recognisable for someone who knows the area. I also love the way it's just squeezed in between these massive hills and cliffs. It just looks so good. Eventually, we're also going to have a tram line come down here as well. And speaking of tram lines, we're going to extend the other one right now and get it running. And when I say other one, the only one. I meant the only one. It's the only one we have in the city, and it's the one that runs over the aqueduct. I can't wait to get this going. The way I normally do this is place down the two stations, get the line running, and then detail everything to suit around that. I've decided to extend the tram line on from our botanical gardens and have it carry on into that new section that we've just made, and also around the coast and into a part of the city we haven't developed yet. To do this, I need to wiggle all of our other networks out of the road. No pun intended. But the train track going into the main station has to be moved, and the main highway needs to be moved a little bit. I'm also going to modify the terrain and slope everywhere that I need to so that our tram tracks, not going off a cliff. Eventually I'd like to have some nice tram ride videos from around the city, and I'd like them to be somewhat realistic as well, so these slopes are important to get right before we put the tracks down. I'm also trying to wiggle the track and follow that terrain as closely as I can without making it too boring, because once we've built up all around this will help it look sort of natural. I'll move on to the boring part next, and that's putting the tram depot in. I've just got this somewhere way out of the way at the moment. We will build this area up eventually, but for now I just want to get this working. So after that's put in, I'm going to extend the tracks everywhere that I need to, and then put those tram stops in. Once we see the tram moving and we know it's all working, then we're in business. Then we're going to start building out the block that surrounds the furthest tram stop, and we're basically going to build out our own little secluded beach area here. So we end up with this little peninsula that juts out, that's sort of separating these two main areas now. We've also got a semi-main road that winds its way over a more mellow part of that hill. That's also following where our tram line's coming through. And I've also put in this unique looking little wee overflow canal thing that's here. This is following what we see in a real life part of Rio de Janeiro. I've sunk a gravel road into the ground in game, and tried to make it look like an old dry riverbed is flowing through this retained little canal. You may have also noticed that I've got all the roads in. Nothing special to see here. We've followed the same method that we've followed right throughout the city. We've got windy little narrow alleyway roads where the terrain is changing steep or quickly, and a small grid pattern where we're going to have more built up residential areas, particularly around the tram stop. We are going to plaster this place with detail, and it's going to start with this area of left here for the tram stop. I need a little bit of space between the two tracks here. Then I need to find a little wee long narrow building that we can sort of use for the main part of the stop. I'm also forced to change the roads a little bit in this area, and there's some really horrible intersections that I just love. Hey man, it all adds to that unique flavour. So this is the tram that I'm taking inspiration from, and as you can see, very picturesque, but also really grungy, really dirty, and in places really steep. Unfortunately, I can't show you guys any photos or videos of the tram stop that I'm taking inspiration from, because all of the photos were copyrighted, and I don't really want to take any chances. But it's a little wee square or oblong building sitting tightly between the tracks running either side of it, and it's really brightly coloured. I can't do much about the brightly coloured part, but I'm going to cover it in graffiti. I think that'll look pretty cool. I put a lot of old weathered concrete around on the ground in this area also, and I put in a fountain, but I take this out again later on. It just didn't look right. So much like the train station, the main train station, I don't really know how the pedestrians are going to access this tram stop yet, so I'm just going to put some pedestrian paths in everywhere I think they may use them. You could see earlier that I tried to put an overpass in for pedestrians, but I just could not get that to work. I know the tram's already coming in, that's not a problem, but I haven't seen anyone board it yet. It's still early days, but hopefully citizens are going to use it within game. One thing I would like to do with this area as a whole, this whole new city area this side of that peninsula we've built, I want to make it look dangerous, for a lack of a better term. I want to make it look like this shouldn't be where tourists go. Maybe this is the part of the city that you're advised not to go. What you're going to see me do with this tram stop area in a second is what I'm going to do with this whole part of the city. I'm going to make it look beautifully intimidating. What a cool looking tram stop, and a great spot to come if you want to get beaten up. There's still a lot of detailing that I need to do in this area. I mean, that took about 3.5 hours, and that's only a small part of what I want to get done. So let's just put one foot in front of the other and start with the main things. So I want to put a little wee bit of a stage area in this park that we've left around the canal. I want it to look like maybe street performers and low-level performers can come here and give free shows or whatever, so it's going to look pretty old. I want some graffiti on it. Maybe 95% of the time this just sits here with nothing happening. It could even double as a car park or a storage area if it's not being used for a concert. In any case, it adds something a little bit different. All the rest of the detailing in this area is all being done off camera. I'm doing that because it's just more of that graffiti, more of that staining. I put the odd little bit of trash around the bins that already exist around some of the buildings, and you've seen that a couple of times before. I've got some really nice cinematics coming up really soon that show off all of the grunginess we've added. I love that beach area we added today, and I love the way it's angled just a little bit differently to the Copacabana beach over the other side of the peninsula. The little private beach we made right at the beginning looks great too. That park area looks really interesting. I can't wait to build this area out a little bit more. We finally got our tram line running today as well, and it looks so good going across that aqueduct. I really can't wait to build that area out either. The tram and the train just add so much cool animation to the city. It's great to watch, and you can see the city is really starting to fill out. Over the course of the next few episodes, we are going to add in some vital areas to the city. As it stands right now, we have about 200 planes fly over a day and they have nowhere to go, so hint hint, we might have to do something about that. I've also got virtually no industry areas. We need to do something about that too. We need football stadiums. I need to finish the Christ Redeemer statue. I need coffee is what I need. I hope you guys have enjoyed the episode. I love putting these together for you guys. A thumbs up is much appreciated. It helps me with the algorithm stuff, and you could even upgrade yourself to a legend by putting a comment down. That's right, that's all it takes. Thanks again for watching, guys. Look after yourselves, and I'll see you in the next episode of Rio Paulo. Catch you later.